Until the 80s, racing games were only arcade. But starting from the 90s, racing games added two more categories we know today. The field simulation introduced with GP2, and sim arcade introduced with Gran Turismo. But these two categories didn't stop the full arcade one, even today. And one historical series I want to show you today in this 17th episode of my retro game series is the Ridge Racer series, in both PlayStation and PlayStation 2. The first Ridge Racer was released in arcade system board, those you find in games rooms, which you have to insert your coins, in 1993. In 1995 it was released on the first PlayStation, but with lower resolution of the texture and lower frame per second, 30 instead of 60. Just a little important info. Ridge Racer is the very first game ever released on PlayStation. In fact, its series number was SHIZ00001. So yeah, the very first game ever released on the domestic console made by Sony was a racing game. Of course, developers didn't know yet the potential of the first PlayStation. In fact, both content and graphics were basic. In fact, the game was so light in terms of megabytes weight, the PlayStation could entirely memorize the game in its RAM, and you could remove the game disc while playing and put a music CD to listen your favorite music while racing. Pretty cool feature for a 26 years old game, right?
Wow, what a start! This is just what I wanted to see! Two laps to go!
If we talk about physics, well, don't pretend a lot. The drifting system is atrocious and show us this game aged pretty badly. Even the content wasn't so big, considering also it's an insert coin arcade game, and like all kind of arcade games, it doesn't offer a lot. But despite that, it was fun back in 1995, and I remember I played it a lot with my cousin on his PlayStation.
Yeah! It's a new record! Great job! I got everything on camera, so you'll watch it later, huh? You're the greatest!
But just 1 year later, in 1996, the players of the world got Ridge Racer Revolution. This sequel had better graphics and slightly more content. The game featured 15 different cars now. Still, the gameplay isn't changed. In fact, physics were exactly the same.
3, 2, 1, go! Great start! Now go for the lead! 3 laps to go!
Ridge Racer Revolution wasn't a revolution as the name itself says. In fact, it had just two new features. The most important one was the mirror in first-person view. The second one was the option to select the time of the day in which the race takes place, although this is not available at the start of the game. Like the previous chapter, also this one features the day-night transition, and it looks great, even today in my opinion.
Come back!
Ridge Race Revolution had also two hidden modes. The first one was a drift competition. The second one featured deformed cars to make them appear like Choroku cars. So this sequel wasn't the revolution it claimed to be, and graphically it wasn't the best racing game of 1996. But as you know, players of those years weren't so short-tempered as today. In fact, this game got a great success. For the real revolution, players had to wait 1997.
You did it! You're the champion!
Absorb the speed and power of your winning machine. Come the baddest, the one and only Rage Racer. Don't let it down now.
The third game of the series was RACER. It was still based in the arcade insert coin counterpart, so it was based in the first Ridge Racer, but it had better graphics and new interesting features. First one was the introduction of an in-game economical system which allowed you to buy cars and other stuff with credits earned by winning races. The second one was the possibility to fully customize the car aesthetics and performances and its paints. It wasn't something very common in those years, and it was probably the best feature of this racing game. The game had fictional manufacturers and 5 grades of racing. After completing the 5 grades, you had a 6th grade with reverse version of trucks.
Racers, start your engines and let's get it on. Three, two, one, go! The race is on. Show 'em what you've got. 3 laps to go. Take this chump for a ride.
But gameplay, yeah, as I told you before, it was based in the first Ridge Racer, so physics were really bad, not to mention the collision physics. So to compare to another arcade game of the same year, Port Challenge had way less content but way better graphics and way better physics. Not to mention later that year players of the world will get Gran Turismo. But this is another story.
3 laps to go.
But if you think this is the best Namco can do on the first PlayStation, then you're totally wrong. In fact, 2 years later they released a totally new game, and this time the progress was tangible, especially on the graphics part.
Finish!
He's the one for me. There's no place I'd rather be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. To the finish line. Everywhere you look, he's right on time.
Ridge Racer Type 4 was released on Worldwide in 1999, and this time the developers used a total game engine to compete against the other racing game of the same year. It featured 8 different tracks and an impressive amount of 321 cars. After unlocking the 320 cars, you unlock the Pac-Man car, and as you know, Pac-Man was created by Namco. Ridge Racer 4 was the first title of the series on PlayStation to use the shading on polygons, giving the game a greater visual depth than the previous chapter. In fact, graphically it was a huge step up compared to the Ridge Racer. And it was even greater considering both games were made for the same hardware.
It's a new record! 2 laps to go!
Talking about physics, cars were more differentiated in terms of performances, but also they were more grippy and slightly more realistic thanks to the introduction of the lateral body roll. Ridge Racer 4 was also the first title to feature the multiplayer mode split screen. It was a great lack in the previous chapter on PlayStation. Just 1 year and a half later, Sony released the PlayStation 2, and for Namco was the right moment to show its skills and its experience earned in the last years in the last games with Ridge Racer 5.
You're tuned to 76.5 on your FM dial. This is RIDGE FM, broadcasting live from Ridge City. This is for all you race fans out there. Here are the Boom Boom satellites coming straight at you with some wicked beats. Check it out now.
It was released in November 2000. The step up in terms of quality was noticeable already on the menus, way more modern and elegant.
Ridge Racer 5. Okay, here's the latest update on your team's status. Check it out.
Car choice was lower, but cars were way more detailed. And of course you could customize them on both performances and aesthetics. Anyway, they were divided in 3 different classes of speed. On track you see immediately how the series grew up on both graphics and physics compartment. Yeah, of course, it's still an arcade game, but now cars were way more drivable compared to the previous games, and the drift system was improved as well. Like the previous chapter, every car has its own rev counter, but here it was very different for each car. The career mode had different goals and races, but the career progress wasn't so different compared to the previous Ridge Racers from the 90s. So this game, aside from the technical progress, didn't offer new element, except for the Pac-Man mode. This time Namco wanted to include Pac-Man once again, but this game had its own mode. The goal was to avoid the ghost trying to stopping you and trying to reach the ghost in first position. Not very easy, but it was pretty fun. Then in 2003 in North America and Japan, and later in 2004 in Europe, Namco released Air Racing Evolution PlayStation 2, Xbox and GameCube. It was a spin-off of the series, but this time with real licensed cars and with more realistic physics. It had nothing to do with the original Ridge Racer series. I don't know if it was a good idea, considering on PlayStation 2 players had already its majesty Gran Turismo, but at least Namco could try to sell more copies on Xbox and GameCube, considering these two consoles hadn't seen arcade racing games yet. Anyway, the game featured 33 cars, not so much, and several trucks, some of them are real ones, like Suzuka and Motegi. But the most original element of the gameplay consisted in putting pressure to your opponent. See, if you were behind your opponent for several seconds, your opponent started to panic, according to the bar on the hood, and make more mistakes, allowing you to pass him easily.
There's one in your rear view. Look for the right moment and fly ahead. You're gaining position. Swerve left and right and put the pressure on.
It was a very original feature, which made the AI more human. If we see the physics, I consider this game a step lower compared to Gran Turismo 3, and way less compared to the tires model you had on Enthusia. The losses of grip were a bit approximate, imprecise. Anyway, driving a powerful car without driving assist was a real challenge on this game, so I appreciate the effort of developers for this experiment with this game. Graphically speaking, wasn't exceptional, some cars weren't well made according to the proportion of the real counterparts.
200, easy lift, and medium ride.
The game featured also a rally mode with interesting physics and feelings, but World Rally Championship 2 and Colin McRae 3 offered way more in terms of content in this discipline. Not to mention the images, completely absent on Air Racing Evolution. After this game, Namco produced Ridge Racer 6 and 7, respectively in Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. But as you know, I don't cover this console in this video series, so this video stops here. Sorry! Anyway, I hope you liked this 17th episode. If you missed my 16 previous retro gaming episode about all the racing games, please check out the playlist in my video description. Thanks for watching and see you in my next video!